Welcome to Vantage Points. I'm Hisham al-Maligi. Last Ramadan, a Muslim brother in Texas passed away suddenly. He was 59 years old. He had a semi-disabled wife, a stay-at-home wife. He had two daughters. One was about to get married this fall, and the other was a young daughter in school. He had also a son that's in the military, and the son of that son, the grandson of the deceased person, was having heart issues and surgeries during that time. The unfortunate fact is that brother did not have a will written. Of course, for Muslims, inheritance laws are very important because it pertains to the rights of every member of the family. When there is no will in the American system, then you have to go to court, you have to file something called tort, and you have to go jump through hoops in order to get to the stage where the deceased would have liked. Of course, there is an added cost that this family was quoted $3,000 from a lawyer in order to help them go through this process. Today, I have the pleasure to host Abdulaziz Awad. He's an international known lawyer. He's licensed to practice in New York and New Jersey. He's an adjunct professor at Rutgers University, and he's the founder of Sharia Wiz, an automation of the will and last testament process. Abid, welcome to Vantage Points, and thank you very much for joining us today to give us your time and experience and talk about this process.
Well, thank you very much for that very kind introduction, Hisham, and thank you for inviting me to Vantage Point, and looking forward to having a conversation that is educational in nature and hope the viewers can benefit. Again, this is a conversation that is educational. Listeners, if they need specific legal advice, they need to consult a lawyer. This is provided as education. There's no attorney-client relationship created by viewers, and anything that I say, you still have to consult a lawyer if you have a complex matter.
Exactly, and this is a legal issue that everybody, of course, should be familiar with now, that this episode is not considered a legally binding advice. If you have something that you need to discuss, you should hire a lawyer, but you will receive a lot of good information and education from Abdulaziz to help you start on this process. Thank you very much for joining me again. So let's start. When this incident happened that I just mentioned in the intro, I was searching, like I have a group of study Quran group that about 24 people, 24 families, and most of them don't have wills. So they requested that we do some event with a lawyer to educate us. And when I searched, I found the website Sharia Wiz, and it looked awesome, but I had no information about it. So let's start with that. What is Sharia Wiz? Give me the story.
I've been practicing law for 20 years plus. And I've been teaching on the adjunct faculty of Rutgers Law School for the past 15 years. I went to graduate school before I attended law school, and my areas of study in graduate school for 3 years was Islamic law, hadith, Arabic literature, and I acquired a certain expertise and knowledge about the Sharia. And then I went to law school, and I continued my studies in the Sharia and started teaching Islamic law at Rutgers Law School, and started providing a lot of expert services to lawyers in courts around the country, in England, in Canada, relating to the interpretation and application of Sharia and the laws of Muslim majority countries. So I have this vast experience for 25 plus years of studying and working with the Islamic law and with the Sharia, specifically in the family area, in the commercial area, and in estate planning, in inheritance. And I noticed in my practice that many Muslim Americans were opting out of doing a Sharia compliant will or an Islamic will. And the reasons, it appeared that people were misunderstanding the Islamic law of inheritance. There were some perceived misconceptions about the gender inequities. People were not aware of Sharia solutions to many of the concerns that they've had. So over this period of time, I formulated and researched the Islamic law of inheritance and came up with a very unique way to approach some of the issues that Muslim Americans would ask me about, whether they would ask me about a wife's inheritance, whether about a daughter's inheritance, and about other issues relating to the Islamic law of inheritance. So I decided I'm going to leverage this expertise that I have, both academic and practical, and I want to see if I can automate this and make these solutions available to Muslim Americans all over the United States, not just people who come to my office. And that was the birth of the idea of Sharia Wiz. So Sharia Wiz is an online portal that provides you with an automated system to create your Sharia compliant or Islamically compliant estate plan, which includes an Islamic will, an Islamic healthcare directive, /living will, and a general power of attorney. And we take into account all of these issues so that the user gets educated about the Islamic law of inheritance, is able to complete and protect his family and comply with a religious requirement within 15 to 20 minutes on his home phone or his home computer. So that's the big picture about what ShariaWiz.com is. But Sharia Wiz also, we spent 3 years, thousands of hours of research and testing to create this platform and create an Islamic inheritance calculator. So when you come to the website, you're able to use the calculator for free and calculate your estate in the event of you passing away. So you'll be able to determine your Islamic heirs and their shares on a click of a button. And we go 3 generations. It's the most extensive online calculator available in the market. It goes more in generations than any other calculators. Moreover, it's the only certified, scholar-certified calculator. We had Muslim scholars test it to make sure of our accuracy. And we've taken into account the American Muslim community, because American Islam is the most diverse Islam in the world. We have more than 80 or 90 nationalities or backgrounds that represent Muslim Americans. And we are an evolving community, a lot of converts in our community,
Right.
A lot of mixed families in our community.
Right.
We take all of those issues into account in our Sharia Wiz design, and we take that into account in our calculator. So it's really an American Islam project.
This is awesome, and the complexity that I can imagine behind this project is unimaginable. And of course, your 25 years experience, including globally, of course, helped in that a lot. Could you tell us a little bit about your background, especially your involvement overseas with systems and governments and laws of inheritance in other countries?
Well, I have a unique background in the sense that I was born in Inglewood, New Jersey. When I was 6.5 years old, my father returned to Palestine. My family's from a small village in the outskirts of Ramallah. And my father was an American businessman, so he had the financial ability and wherewithal to enroll me in the private schools in Palestine. So I went to an American Quaker school, where we studied both Arabic and English from second grade all the way through the 11th grade. So I lived in Palestine from 1976 to 1986. So Arabic is my native language. I speak fluent Arabic just as I do in English, read, write, and so forth. And I continued my reading and my study in Arabic in graduate school and ever since. So after being growing up in a Muslim country, I've been around Islamic law of inheritance. As you know, Hisham, is that if you pass away in Egypt or in Palestine or in Jordan, it's the law of the land. There's no opt-out of the Islamic law of inheritance.
Right.
Therefore, so we are accustomed to understanding these issues of inheritance. My grandparents, my family members. So I was around these inheritance distributions and was familiar since I was a child. And then I studied it and worked on it when I was in graduate school, and I continued to work on it in my law practice. And I spent many years of study in order to write the code for the calculator. So you will see, anyone can just go test it. Not only does it do the calculations, it gives you the Quranic authority for the calculation or the Hadith authority for the calculation. So my practice, I've had cases, I've testified as an expert in Islamic law all over the United States. I've had cases in Canada. I have cases currently. I have 2 cases in England that I've handled. I've done a case in 2 cases in Singapore. So I have this diverse international exposure and the discussions about these issues of inheritance. And I have a lot of clients who would come to me and say, oh, my father passed away in Egypt. What do I do? So we connect them with lawyers in Egypt, and they file their petitions for hasr al-irth so that they can get a certificate. So I'm familiar with the rules of Islamic inheritance in many of the Muslim countries, because clients ask me and they need advice, because if they have assets in Egypt, or if they have assets in Palestine, or assets in Pakistan, or in India, the Islamic law of inheritance is going to govern. So we got to give them some guidance. In fact, I'm working on a case for a Christian inheritance circumstance in Lebanon, where the laws apply. So I have this nice diverse background that gave me a keen eye on designing and crafting something that's workable for the American Muslim.
MashaAllah, this is beautiful. And so here's a question then about the international dimension of this. Are inheritance laws according to Islamic Sharia different from country to country? Like you mentioned, for example, Pakistan and Egypt.
Well, they by and large, they're not different. Okay. They have some very small differences. Like you can look at the biggest difference is in Egypt. Mm-hmm. So while all of the other Muslim countries, they apply strictly la wasiya li warith, that Muslims have up to 1/3 of their estate that they have a discretion to distribute to somebody else outside mm-hmm. of their Islamic heirs. Mm-hmm. That's called al-wasiyya in Arabic. Mm-hmm. There's a hadith tradition that says la wasiyya li warith. So the scholars determine that even though you have discretion within this 1/3 of your estate, you are not permitted to leave part of that 1/3 or that 1/3 to an Islamic heir, meaning you can't leave that 1/3 to your wife. Mm-hmm. You can't leave that 1/3 to your daughter. Mm. That's the Sunni position. Okay. The Ja'fari position is that 1/3 you have flexibility and the right and freedom to leave it to whomever you wish. Okay. You can leave that 1/3 to your wife. You can leave that 1/3 to your daughter. Egypt, we have 4 or 5 fatwas out of the Azhar, and it is codified in Egyptian law, allows a Muslim Egyptian to leave the 1/3 to anyone he wishes, including an Islamic heir. So that's one difference. Other differences involve al-wasiyya al-wajiba. Some have codified it, some haven't. And al-wasiyya al-wajiba is that if you have a child who predeceases you, his children are blocked from inheritance. Meaning, if you have a son and he has children, but your son dies in your lifetime, his children do not inherit under Islamic law. So Umar ibn Khattab took exception with that, and he realized that that was an inequity, and he created this concept called al-wasiyya al-wajiba, meaning that that 1/3 of your estate you should, by law, give part of that to your predeceased child's son or daughter. Now, there's discussions in Egypt recently about whether the wasiyya al-wajiba would apply to a daughter, a predeceased daughter's children. That's a discussion. The other differences are if any of the Muslim countries adopt a specific madhab. All of the madahib, madhab al-Maliki, wal-Shafi'i, wal-Hanbali, by and large, are almost on all fours. Their rules of inheritance are the same, except in what we call al-masail al-mashhura wal-masail al-ghariba. In these masail that are the unique ones, there's some variation, but they're very rare. The Hanafi school has a main difference, and that main difference relates to who blocks. Now, if you pass away and you have a father, your siblings do not inherit. If you pass away with a grandfather but no father, under the three schools, al-Hanbali, Shafi'i, wal-Maliki, the siblings share with the grandfather. In the Hanafi school, the grandfather blocks the siblings like a father. So that's a difference. Another difference in the Hanbali school is that I think it's a paternal grandmother inherits, where in the other three schools, a paternal grandmother in certain circumstances does not inherit. So they're very, very rare differences. So by and large, it's all the same.
But to be honest, even I consider myself somewhat learned, but my head is spinning from these what you call minor differences. So, is the user of Sharia Wiz, will they be able to maneuver these things without like having to have a scholar next to them and a lawyer next to them?
Well, in the Sharia Wiz, we've programmed all of these nuances and differences. So when you go to the calculator, you select the school of law that you want to follow. So if you select the Hanafi school, the grandfather will block siblings. If you selected the majority school, the grandfather will not block siblings. So yes, we've taken all of these into account, and we also have a halaqa learning center where we have so far maybe like 50 or 55 questions with answers relating to some of these issues. I also have videos. I've produced probably 50 informational videos that are on our YouTube channel that, like, for example, will explain the basics of what's the Islamic law of inheritance. What does al-awal mean? What does ar-rad mean? What does ta'sib mean? And we explain, for example, why does a daughter not block siblings? We have all of these things are covered. This is 3 years, thousands of hours of research and writing. We take pride. The thing is that sometimes that, unfortunately, when you think of Muslim products today, we have what's called uqdat al-khawaja, kind of like what Frantz Fanon had discussed. Black faces with white masks. So we internalize our inferiority complex. So everybody thinks of a Muslim product. Oh, it's not really the good product. You better you go to a non-Muslim. So usually when you even go want a service, you always want to. A lot of Muslims say, oh, these Muslims are not good. I'm going to go somewhere else. They're better. So we have this internal inferiority complex. But in my generation and younger, Muslim Americans are over that. They don't have that inferiority complex. Maybe our parents and the older generation. But we take Sharia, the purpose that we even use the word Sharia in the title and the brand is to bring back this understanding, the genius, the sophistication of what the Sharia was as a system that produced knowledge. It was the Muslim epistemology par excellence that functioned for 1,300 years producing knowledge. And now, when you say the word Sharia, everybody thinks of politics, totalitarianism, cutting hands. And Muslims are afraid of Sharia. So what do you think of mainstream Americans are going to think about Sharia? So we decided that we're going to take this head on, and we're going to use Sharia in its pre-modern epistemological sense, that it is a system, a methodology that produces knowledge. We rely on the sources, we rely on this tradition to produce knowledge, to produce solutions that apply to your circumstances as a Muslim American. And amongst the things in the Sharia is this, the value of quality, the pride that you take in your workmanship. Because as Muslims, the money we own, we don't own money. We don't own wealth. هذا ملك لله.
Right.
Allah ائتمننا على هذا الثروة.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the provider. He is the owner, and we are entrusted users.
Trusted. So when you're entrusted, when somebody entrusts you to do his construction on his home, somebody entrusts you to handle his legal case, when somebody entrusts you to buy a computer from you, this is there is a divine moral accountability to your workmanship and to the quality that you want to comply with to please the divine.
Right.
So that's why we take Sharia Wiz as a product that we're going to constantly aspire to make it the household name, the best brand in Muslim American communities, because we want to be true to what God has entrusted us in this lifetime, because we will be accountable in the hereafter. So that's for that reason we continue to improve, continue to test. And we want to provide solutions to Muslim Americans. And we have some solutions for daughters and so forth, but we're still engaging with scholars. We're not making things up. We're providing options, and we're engaging with scholars and having open dialogue about issues that concern the Muslim American community.
So let's talk about scholarship. You mentioned earlier that you had discussed this with scholars from different schools of thought, and you have their approval. Can you tell us more? Because a lot of people with different levels of adherence and strictness to Islamic teachings. So which scholars, which schools of thought are on board with Sharia Wiz?
Well, I mean, we have some Raqaba, which is a Sharia compliant audit company. They audited our calculator, and they will continue to audit it every year. And they gave us a certificate that our calculator is compliant with the Sharia. So that covers all of the schools on the calculator. Our product has been endorsed by, many scholars. Zaid Shakir endorsed us. A professor who teaches Islamic inheritance at Zaytuna University, Professor Abdullah Ali, endorsed us. Professor Wa'il Halak at Columbia University endorsed us, and he's a preeminent scholar. Dalia Mujahid, a pretty well-known Muslim American female leader, and in tune with Muslim American issues and concerns about gender. She endorsed us. My favorite friend, wonderful Imam from New Jersey, Dr. Shadi al-Masri, he endorsed us. And we have others that are reviewing it and have indicated that the endorsements will be forthcoming.
That's excellent. So the any Muslim. Oh, so now actually, what about the different laws in different states? Because it's. I mean, you teach us about this point. Tell us why the states are different and how Sharia is compatible with all of them.
Um, each Sharia Wiz document that you purchase on Sharia Wiz is built by experienced lawyers and according to the laws of your state. Um, there, there's states that have certain requirements on the formalities of the will. All of those formalities and the requirements and the signatures and all that have been state tested and state vetted. So your estate plan on Sharia Wiz is state specific. It's drafted based on your laws. Now, by and large, there are two jurisdictions in the U.S. You have a jurisdiction that we call a marital assets or equitable distribution estate, and we have other states that are community property states. There are 9 community property states, and the balance of the rest of the United States are marital equitable distribution states. So in community property states, the Sharia compliant will is different than the Sharia compliant will that's for New York, for example. So if you look at the will for Texas, the Sharia compliant, it's not the same will that you're going to use for New York. In New York, because of the nature of the equitable distribution jurisdiction, which means that all assets acquired during the marriage are marital, but at the time of death, your assets are going to be whatever is in your name is going to go into your estate, and that will be distributed according to your will. In the community property states, a wife and a husband automatically have 50-50 in the assets. Mm-hmm. And some jurisdictions even provide a survivorship right, meaning that when one spouse dies, the other spouse gets 100% of the assets. So in the Texas will, you will have a schedule. So when you are preparing your will, it'll give you a schedule of dividing the assets into 3 categories. What is going to be separate property for husband? What is going to be separate property for wife? And what is going to remain community property for both husband and wife? Gives you those options. It also includes a community property transmutation agreement that the husband and the wife sign to convert the legal character of each one of these assets to their desired wishes. That is not necessary in the New York will, for example. So we apply the vast variety of these laws in crafting the Sharia Wiz forms and templates.
That's very good. So I mean, the Muslim who usually, I mean, in the United States, unless you're a business owner with multiple properties spanning different states and even different countries, it's usually a house, a car, and maybe a 401k or something similar to that. How much time do you think someone without that knowledge would need to come up using Sharia was come up with their will? How much time would that take and effort?
About 15 minutes.
Wow.
You know, you can create your entire estate plan, which is a will, healthcare directive, and power of attorney, 20 minutes.
Wow. So Sharia Wiz is not only a will, there's a power of attorney and
well, what it is that you can purchase the will standalone,
mm,
and you can purchase the healthcare directive standalone, and you can purchase the power of attorney standalone,
mm,
or you purchase them as a package. So if you purchase them as a package, it's $250.
mm,
But what you get is the will, the Islamic inheritance, the healthcare directive is just as important as the will, if
mm.
even more, because in the healthcare directive, it's an issue about your end of life wishes.
Right.
And we crafted it to be compliant with Islamic law and with Islamic traditions,
Mm,
consistent with many of the, for example, what's your position on do not resuscitate orders? What is your position on donating your organs? What is your position about removing life support? So we address all of these in the state-specific healthcare directive. So every single state has a different healthcare directive. So we went through these 50 states, obtained all of the statutory forms by law, and we crafted them to be compliant with the Sharia and Islamic law, and letting your medical care providers and letting your family know what your wishes are. So this way that if you're on life support, you don't want your wife and your kids fighting, are we pulling life support or not? You don't want one daughter and another daughter fighting on who's going to make those decisions about end of life. Why burden your family with such complicated and emotionally difficult decisions? Let people know what you want. Let them know what your position is on life support, what your position is on organ donation, what your position on do not resuscitate orders. All of this is in your living will healthcare directive. And the same thing with the power of attorney. So now we're in COVID and your
mm,
father is in his 70s. You don't want him going to the pharmacy picking up your medical. You don't want him going down to the Social Security office. You don't want him to be, going to the bank to cash his check. So a power of attorney, that's why we call it an estate plan. It's covering everything during your disability and in the event of death. So it's really a package.
Amazing. We're speaking with Abdulaziz Awad, an internationally recognized lawyer, adjunct professor at Rutgers University, and a Sharia expert. He is the creator of Sharia Wiz, a platform to automate and facilitate and make it easier to establish your will and last testament, your power of attorney, and your healthcare directive. Abid, I'm amazed so far. Time is flying. We're already halfway through the show, but I want to mention something about even the name Sharia Wiz. Wiz, of course, is the small or short for wizard, and
Mhm.
wizard is somebody who is well known. Tell us more about how you came up with the name.
Well, it's actually Wiz has become synonymous with automation and making things easy and accessible. So usually when you're downloading a software, you click on the wizard or on to upload the software and make it fast. So we used the Sharia Wiz as the Wiz in Sharia Wiz as a description of ease, as a description of automation, smooth and easy. So that's why. So Sharia Wiz is that you're going to go on Sharia Wiz and you're going to be able to whiz through your estate plan in 15 minutes.
Mhm,
And then it's very important is that because of the nature of our project, we have the highest level of security. We have an SSL certificate that is bank level encryption. It's basically the same encryption that is used by banks.
mhm,
So I bank with Capital One and Citibank. So I have the same certificate that they use.
mhm,
In addition, you are able to update and change your estate planning documents for free for life at any time. So you make one purchase, maybe in 6 months you have a change in your family, or maybe you change your mind about something, or maybe you didn't leave charity and now you said, you know what, I want to leave money for my mosque. I want to leave money for Islamic relief. You're able to go back into your dashboard, make those updates, print the new documents, notarize them and sign them. You have a new will. Pay one
Wow.
time and you can update it as many times as you wish.
Wow. This is amazing because, as I mentioned in the intro, $3,000 was quoted just to work around the issues of no will left by the deceased Muslim just to get things started. So this is $250, not just a will, but also a power of attorney and a healthcare directive, and you have access to it to change it at any time for your life.
Absolutely.
$250. May
Yep.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you and enable you to continue in the service of Islam and Muslims, especially here in the United States.
Inshallah.
So,
That's our plan. That's our objective.
Ameen, inshallah. So, the name Sharia Wiz is not will and last testament Wiz, is not power of attorney Wiz. So, are there plans to add other services in the future?
Yes, we will be launching in August our next product, which is very unique because there is no product like this online, which is a Sharia compliant trust.
Hmm.
So for the more sophisticated user and willing to learn about the importance of trust, is that you will be able to create a trust. And when you create, so let me back. You have a will-based estate plan, which is what we provide right now, a will-based estate plan, which is a will, healthcare directive, and general power of attorney. And then you have what's called a trust-based estate plan, which includes a trust, a pour over will, a healthcare directive, and a general power of attorney. The difference is that a will is going to be probated. So when you pass away, that will has to be filed with the court, and your executor, the person that you selected, he gathers up the estate, does the distribution, does everything, and then just files it with the court, and they close the file. In a trust-based estate plan, you avoid the court altogether. And you don't have to file anything with the court. It becomes a private administration. It's the trustee, the successor trustee that you selected will divide the estate, take care of everything, and close the trust. If it's a revocable trust that has a specific termination date. Now, a trust is kind of like a waqf. The only difference is that when we do a waqf, it's always irrevocable. There are some circumstances in a waqf dharri, in a waqf ahli, that could have a termination date and a closure date.
And a waqf is an endowment, right?
Yes, a waqf is like it's an endowment, like a trust
Mhm.
endowment.
Mhm.
So what a trust does is that you create, kind of by this document, you end up creating a legal entity of some sort that's a trust.
Mhm.
This trust owns the property.
Hmm.
So you have to transfer ownership of the property to the trust.
Hmm.
For people who select the trust option, what they do is they will transfer title of their house into the trust.
Mhm.
They will transfer the beneficiary of their 401k to the trust. They would transfer their bank accounts to a trust. And the trust would own all these assets. But then the trustee, who could be you, the person who is the maker and creator of the trust, can be the trustee. So in your lifetime, you manage the trust and you take the income, you spend it, you do whatever you want during lifetime. When you pass away, you would select a successor trustee, and you appoint that successor trustee based on your trust document what to do.
Hmm.
Generally, what to do from our perspective in the product that we're offering, because it's a Sharia compliant offering, it's basically distributing the trust assets according to the Sharia.
Hmm.
So is going to be our next product that will be available, inshallah, in the beginning of August.
Inshallah. Can we speak about the difference between the execution of the will versus the trust? Because it seems now, from what you said about the trust, that the will still has to go through the court system when the trust does not have. Is this
Yeah.
correct?
Now, yes. Now, the will has to be probated, meaning that once you pass away, that you take that will to the court, and they register to the court, and they issue the letters to your executor
Mhm.
because you've picked somebody. Now, if you die without a will, you're going to court to do a lot of extra steps. You got to go to court to say, okay, he died without a will.
Mhm.
You have to file a petition to appoint who's going to be the executor of the estate, who's
Mhm.
going to administer the estate, and who maybe the older son is going to want it, maybe the wife is going to want it, maybe they're going to fight on who's going to be the executor.
Mhm.
And then after you do that, then you have to have the court apply the intestacy law.
Hmm.
Or you have to have the lawyer that's going to help. How do you divide the estate? Because now you have to apply and interpret the law.
Hmm.
With the will, you've already said where my assets are going to be distributed. And it's going to be distributed according to the Sharia. And it's going to be distributed according to what you set forth in your will. So that's the difference. Now, with the trust, you don't have to even go ask the court for anything, because you have created this trust that holds everything outside of the court. But again, a trust is a bit more complex in way of its management. It's more, it requires a lot more uh, steps. You have to keep, you have to transfer the title of your assets, and it could be an ongoing issue. So you have to be a little bit more sophisticated for that product, and that product doesn't really help people who are, don't own a lot of assets. So if you own, like you said, if you own a home and a 401k, I mean, a will is probably good enough. And it's cheap and it's fast. A trust is helpful, but again, you're going to have to transfer title and deeds, and it's going to cost you more money. So even though we're trying to make it as affordable as possible, I think right now it's maybe $4.99 for the trust product and the all of the other items.
And if I understand correctly, a trust could also be helpful financially in case, God forbid, someone needs to be on government Medicare or Medicaid or things of that sort. Am I correct?
Yes and no. It has to be specific types of trusts.
Hmm.
The trusts that we are offering are revocable trusts, so they're providing the trustee and the creator a lot of flexibility. He can change his mind and close it.
Hmm.
But there are other types of trusts that are irrevocable trusts, and irrevocable trusts have very limited circumstances for you to change them. So that's, I believe, in the Medicaid planning, they're generally the irrevocable trusts that you have no control over the asset anymore. It's gone.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like in the waqf. In the waqf, you alienate a piece of property fi sabilillah in perpetuity, lil abad.
Hmm.
Khalas. You gave it, you can never take it back.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like in the irrevocable trust circumstance.
So this will be helpful to have an endowment for organizations or causes.
Oh yes,
Hmm.
absolutely. So we, in my practice in New York and New Jersey, we can handle these irrevocable trusts and things like that.
Hmm.
Irrevocable trust really require advice of counsel, because there may be some unique circumstances. But a revocable trust is generally something that is workable and can be automated. And we have a Sharia compliant trust already prepared. And we're actually now in the process of coding it And we are just going through the statutes of many other jurisdictions and speaking with other attorneys from other states, because trusts also are quite uniform. There are some states, there's probably 35 states that follow the same exact law. And you don't even have to have witnesses to execute your trust. You could just sign it, and it'll be valid. But we highly recommend in our automated template that we're going to be offering in August, we recommend that you have it notarized, so that there is no question that the trust was created.
So you simply print it, take it to a notary public, sign in front of them,
And that's
and that's it. That's
it.
excellent. So have you
And with
spoken?
the trust, you're able to go back and change it at any time.
Oh, also, okay.
Mhm.
So this is revocable.
Yes,
Okay. So you can change the organization or the cause that you want. You can completely cancel or
absolutely.
okay. And the same thing like the will. Once you paid, you have access to it for life.
For life.
MashaAllah, that's beautiful. So of course, this could revo- make a revolution in the way that we fund our organizations in the United States and in non-Muslim majority countries in general. Have you spoken to any organizations, and are they on board?
Yes, actually, we just finalized our the terms of our agreement with Islamic Relief. Sharia Wiz and Islamic Relief have a cooperation agreement that we are going to work together, because how can I explain, is the issue regarding the role of a waqf and the role of charitable contributions to fund and finance institutions is so strong in Islamic history. And we have lost the power of this tool in building the Muslim civil society and building institutions in Muslim societies and communities worldwide and in the United States. So for that reason is that one of the other purposes and the design of Sharia Wiz was to create Sharia Wiz as the planned giving virtual department for every Muslim American organization. Because in Sharia Wiz, when you go onto the platform, you're going to get to a section that's going to ask you about charitable bequests. And in that section, you are able to leave part of your estate to the charity of your choice. Because if you love your mosque, if you love Islamic Relief and you love the work that they're doing, fi sabilillah, you have to include them in your end of life arrangements. You have to leave a charity. You have to leave a sadaqah jariyah. A sadaqah jariyah is very important. And that was, by the way, in Muslim societies, in the Ottoman Empire, almost 60-70% of the property of the Ottoman Empire territories was held in waqf. In Egypt, in Mamluk time, it was somewhere like 40% was held in waqfs. In Algeria, it was almost 50%. So the waqf was part of the Muslim civil society. It was part of the independence of the political powers. It was part of the safety net for your neighbors and for your community. So we want to support our institutions. So if you go to a mosque and you love your center, you got to think of leaving them something in your will. This is how most other faith-based communities in the US fund their institutions. So you're able to go on Sharia Wiz and you can do that very easily. And currently you will find Islamic Relief automatically on our platform with an explanation of the programs and the things that they do. And you're able to leave to multiple organizations on our platform. I think we lost your.
Right. MashaAllah, it's amazing what you explained and what this can do to fund the Muslim organizations in the United States, Canada, and maybe other places around the world
Mm,
where there is no government sponsored financing for these institutions.
yeah.
Islamic Relief, for example, could benefit a lot. Almost every Muslim organization, mosque, and school could benefit from these things. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this happen and make it beneficial and supportive.
Inshallah.
Um,
Think about المستشفى I think it's called Qalyuni in Egypt.
mhm,
It was a waqf that was established in the 13th century, continued to provide free medical services in Egypt until the 1900s. And it
subhanallah,
fell in disrepair and closed. So it was a waqf that continued for 600 years.
subhanallah.
Can you imagine استمرارية العمل والعطاء والصدقة الجارية?
Mhm.
Why did the Prophet Muhammad say these things?
Sallallahu Alaihi
You
Wasallam.
know?
Imagine the lasting good deed of the person or
Absolutely.
persons who started this project.
Exactly.
600 years of helping others. MashaAllah. Allahu Akbar. So I just programming note, Brother Abdul Aziz Awad, or as in English is written Abid Awad, agreed to be with us this coming Tuesday, July 7 at 6 p.m. Eastern for a live interview with question and answer that's going to be broadcast live on YouTube and Facebook page of Vantage Points. We will, inshallah, post the link with this recording, and hopefully you can come join us and ask your questions. He will be there along with Sister Heba Maqsood to answer your questions about these issues. Abid, I'm going to put you right on the spot here. And I should have spoke to you about this before, but for viewers who are watching this recording and hopefully the live streaming, is there a perk or an incentive for them to go through Vantage Points to Sharia Wiz?
Um, what we could do is we'll just talk to Hiba,
Hmm.
and we will create a discount code uh, for a 25% discount for anyone that comes through Vantage Point. We will create a specific code for Vantage Point. You just have to ask Hiba, and she will take care of that for you.
Jazakumullah khairan. And there you have it, brothers and sisters. If you go through the code with Vantage Points, you get 25% of the already nominal fee. As
Yeah.
I mentioned in the introduction, a family that the sole breadwinner passed away suddenly and didn't have a will written, just to get to have the inheritance distributed, just to start this process, needed to hire a lawyer for $3,000. The entire process that Sharia was had, it's a will and last testament, it's a power of attorney, it's a healthcare directive, altogether for $250. And now, with the generosity and kindness of Abdulaziz Awad, you will get 25% off with the code that we will give you during the live stream, inshallah, this Tuesday, July 7 at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Join us with Abid Awad, Abdulaziz Awad, and Hiba Maqsood. Okay, now let's.
Another very important point is that also, if you don't have a will, you're not determining the distribution of your estate according to your wishes. You're allowing somebody else to make that decision for you. So the will is very important. You decide how your will is going to be distributed, and as a Muslim, it's an apportionment from God. It's in Surah An-Nisa, and you have to include that in your will. So you're covering and complying with a religious requirement under Islam, plus you're protecting your family, and plus you're saving money that should better go to your family than to other third parties.
MashaAllah. I couldn't end on a better note. Abdulaziz Awad, internationally known legal scholar, adjunct professor of law at Rutgers University, licensed lawyer in New York and New Jersey, and founder of ShariaWiz.com, an automation and facilitation of the will and last testament for Muslims in the United States, but also in non Muslim majority countries. Join us this coming Tuesday, July 7 at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific for a live stream on Facebook and on YouTube, the Vantage Point channels, for an event with question and answer with Abid Awad to answer all your questions about this issue. Abdulaziz Awad, thank you so much for joining us on Vantage Points. We wish you the best of luck. Thank you for what you're doing. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide and protect you and make this project successful to the betterment of the Muslim community.
Thank you very much, Hisham, for inviting me, and looking forward to our conversation on Tuesday.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, this has been this episode of Vantage Points with Hisham and Maligi. Join us inshallah next time. There are hashtags and there is a hashtag. This is the hashtag. Take care, America.